Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Pathways to Excellence. I'm tremendously honored to have with me right here a legit historical figure, Tan Sri Lim Siang, the former Secretary General of the Democratic Action Party. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us here at Tan Sri. It's an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I've just concluded a very interesting tour, really, of the Impian Theater over in Petaling Jaya, where I've had the immense privilege of seeing a long stretch of history involving Tan Sri Lim's life right here. And the focus of today's interview is to understand the kinds of forces that were driving the early Lim Siang. Tan Sri, you're a political legend, leader of the opposition from 1969 up until 1999. If we were to go to every single part of your history, I'm sure that this interview would stretch into days, months, possibly years. But if I could maybe ask you, what was your childhood like, Tan Sri? And what is it that led you to become a child that was so constantly reading that you formed literal book clubs and started, well, trying to understand the socio-political climate of the world at that time?
My first memory of childhood is I was staying in Batuan. The skies, the plains. That was the 1945, I think. The Japanese were withdrawing. The planes were coming back, and they were marching down the streets. So that is a vague memory of first childhood recollection. My father was what I would call an agricultural technician. He's a castrator of pigs and chicken so they can grow faster. I have two brothers and a sister. I'm the youngest. We were staying upstairs near the market. I remember when I was very young, I was urging my parents to send me to school, but I was underage. So they sent me to a kindergarten somewhere nearby. I went to the Chengxiu Chinese Primary School in Standard 1, Standard 2. And in Standard 3, I moved to the Matpat English School. From there, I continued for 11 years of schooling, primary and secondary. But I continued Chinese education in the night school. So daytime I'll go to the English school, and at night I'll go to the Jingxiu night school. And I continued for about 9 years. In school, I don't have much recollection of the primary class, but I was quite active. I played in the primary school. I started play games, basketball, and then we switched football, basketball, and badminton. But I was not very athletic. Although I was active and in Form 3, we had a class magazine. I started a class magazine, The Light.
The light. Right. Yeah, the newspaper.
Form 4 was the Phoenix.
That's my school mascot, Tan Sri.
Huh?
That's my school mascot.
Oh, school mascot.
Yep.
And I ended up as an editor of the school magazine, which is Form 5. I was very active in class. I was involved in the debating society, in the geographic society, in the various activities. But I was very bad in art. So I never liked art.
I see.
But I was active, and we have a group of chaps, and we were always discussing about the political developments in the country. In 1955, 3 of us, 2 of my schoolmates, classmates, we cycled from Batu Pahat to Malacca. And that was during the Bandung Conference, where Chow Eng Lai and Nkrumah, Nasser, Tito, Nehru attended for the first time. And That was the beginning of the end of colonial rule. And next door to my house was the Chinese Old Boys Association.
Mhm.
And they will be singing, but I wasn't involved.
Mm.
You can call me a bookworm. I read excessively, although you may not understand at that time. You read essentially the history of the past, history of the future.
It was mentioned really in P. Tuan Chai's biography that you carried a thesaurus around, right?
Yeah.
A dictionary basically to try to
I
figure out
cannot
the names of
remember.
words.
That's it from my friends.
Right.
I didn't tell Tito that.
And like, do you remember the kinds of books you were reading at the time?
I was reading the Greek, the Romans, the
Uh-huh.
Babylon,
I see.
it's quite excessively. I was involved in the school library.
Wow.
I was in the library, so I have access to books, and then we had a public library in Petaling, and I was involved in that as well.
Wow.
So I was very active. And Form 2, my form master was a sports master.
Mhm.
So I became his secretary, and I look after games and people involved. I won't say any book has influenced me, but excessively not. And I was thirst for knowledge and curious about life.
For sure, yeah. Well, even if, well, you may not remember necessarily an individual book though, Tan Sri, I've always known you as somebody who tends to write a lot more. I mean, like, I've seen your blog posts on your blog.lim Siang right there, and we were just speaking to your secretary, Miss Fu, about, well, how you type out all of your speeches.
Where
Can
I
you still do
learned
that?
all the typing.
Mhm.
At one time, I learned shorthand. I can write in shorthand.
Mhm.
I've forgotten all that already. When you was in school, you learn a lot of things. I was in the detention camp for 16 months, and I learned Jawi. I taught myself Jawi, and I could read Jawi and write Jawi, but I forgotten all it. At that time, when you are a student, you learn a lot of things you continue and you remember and you forget.
That's cool though. Well, on the topic of typing though, so as far as I know, so you are the very first politician from Malaysia to have a Facebook page and then also to start chronicling your thoughts at the time. So what was, I guess, like your thinking?
A daily affair.
A daily affair. Okay. So what would your routine look like then? Like you wake up in the morning, let's start typing, type kind of thing, or
I was a reporter,
right?
and that confirmed my relationship with the director or with computer.
Mm.
It started in the school days.
Mm-hmm. Right. So like you kind of had to have access to typewriters even to make the magazine and everything like that, right?
The class magazine and all that. So,
Wow.
so we sample style and produce the class magazines.
Wow. Okay. Fascinating.
And that was 1955.
1950. Yeah, that's like
And at that time, there was a Form 2 of class magazine unheard of.
Wow, that is definitely a lot of innovation right there. So, what was it really in your education that made you think I need to become involved on a civic level? I need to somehow play a part in the future or the fate of this nation. Was there ever a time in your education that you thought to yourself, I must do this?
In life, you feel that you must be part of the process, part of the change, to be active, to be alive, to be conscious of what is happening all around you. I don't think there was any time in my life I thought that I want to play a role. I want to play in this and that. In a way, we are guided. I was a reporter in Singapore with the Straits Times, and then I went to Radio and Television Singapore. And When I was a reporter in August 9, 1965, I was sent to cover the parliamentary proceedings.
Mm-hmm. And you
But August 9, Singapore was ejected out of Malaysia. So there was nothing to cover. I went to Parliament. First time I went to Parliament was when the Tunku Abdul Rahman introduced the Constitution Amendment to remove Singapore. The Singapore MPs, they withdrew, except for Devan Nair, the sole member of Parliament who won in the 64 general elections. It was an abortive trip because I had to go back without covering because there's nothing to cover.
Right. I recall that you were sent to the Malaysia side when actually Lee Kuan Yew was shedding tears, if I'm not wrong, on the Singapore side at that time.
He was shedding tears. I was on the way back. So I didn't know.
I see. Wow. Okay. And then, still though, when you mentioned Devan Nair, so I know that Mr. Nair was a formative influence in your life. But as I recall from reading your biography, you decided to turn down the position of an editor, if I'm not wrong.
I was a reporter in Singapore, Straits Times, and I went to join the radio television in Singapore.
Right.
And the Ministry, it was under the Ministry of Culture. It could move around.
I see.
So sometime in September 1965, Devan Nair asked to meet me. I was not involved in politics in Singapore. I was involved in the trade unionism. I was Secretary General of the Singapore National Union of Journalists in 1962, and I was 21 years old. We had occasions to meet, and he knew that I'm not a Singaporean. At that time, when Singapore was ejected out of Malaysia, I was more interested in what is happening in Malaya than in Singapore. He knew that I was applying to be promoted to be an editor. I think I was going to get it. And he said that at that time, I was only a Form 5. And an editor will get a 4-figure salary. It's quite a huge salary. But he said, yeah, I cannot pay you so much. But I need somebody to look after my constituency. And he was forming a party, the Democratic Action Party, to run around, to be responsible for the party. So he asked me to go back and discuss with my family whether to take up the appointment. So I told him, I accept. And he was shocked.
Wow.
And they said, no, you go back. You don't decide now. I said, no, never mind. It's all right. It's confirmed.
Confirmed, straight away.
So I went back and I go to my family and I went back to Batu Pahat.
Yes.
My friends, texting and Tekun will tell you, they told me, you're a student, it's 3 years.
I see.
Right. So basically, I don't feel at home in Singapore.
I see.
I felt I want to involve in changes in the country.
I see.
But there was no firm, fixed idea as to what you want to do.
I see. Was it something that you were thinking about doing even when you were in Singapore? Like this idea that somehow you would come back and contribute towards Malaysia?
No. But there was the feeling that in Singapore you don't really belong. Yeah, Singapore is out of Malaysia, and you want to do something worthwhile in your country. That's all.
Wow. And then, so thank you for doing that. Thank you. When you came back to Malaysia, at what point did you feel that this was the right choice? I don't know if it was a decision that you made very rashly or if it was something that you had thought about before, because sometimes we do things maybe randomly. We decide, the next thing you know, it has happened.
I never felt any sense of regret.
Never felt any sense of regret. Wonderful. Okay, amazing. Would you maybe share a little bit about what it was like to learn from Devan Nair? I mean, I know there's a whole lot of drama there because he came over to Malaysia and then, of course, he, well, helped to start up the party in many different ways. Then he mentored you, and you were his political secretary, if I'm not wrong, for a long period of time. But later on, he left Malaysia because he knew that essentially because he was affiliated with the PAP, that it would be potentially used to attack the DAP at a later point. But what was it like for you to learn from Mr. Nair?
He's actually a Malaysian.
Mm-hmm.
He was born in Malacca.
Mm-hmm.
He was born in Zasin. Thinking back, I think he was preparing. He wanted to finish his term as an MP for Bangsa because he promised to serve them for 5 years. Lee Kuan Yew asked him to return. He said, I can't return. And he said he has to fulfill his commitments. But his place was in Singapore. He stood in Bangsa. His wife stood in, I think, Momain or somewhere. Expecting Devan Nair to fulfill his completion to be a Singaporean.
Mm-hmm.
Then this decision was taken for him to contest in Bangsa. It's quite natural.
Mm.
But he felt that he has to complete his term, and he was preparing to withdraw.
I see.
He was not very active because he was preparing to withdraw. He was not very active in the DAP organizationally.
Mm.
Yeah, we were saying in Jalan Kaseng, we turned that into a house, in the office. You come and we will, of course, chair meetings and convene meetings, attend functions, but not very intimately involved.
Mm.
I was more involved than him. I was going on and up and down the country, taking part in the by-elections and various. I think we had about 6 by-elections before the 69 general election. First time we came in was the end of 65. We went to Dr. Chen Manhen's house where there was a meeting of the pro tem committee of the Central Executive Committee. Because at that time the DAP has not been registered yet. And the DAP was only registered on the 18th of March 1966. So before that period, we were all homeless.
Okay.
And it was only when we received the certificate of registration that we became a party.
Mm.
When we became a party, we had about 6 or 7 branches. Johor Bahru, Malacca, BJ, KL, Ipoh. I think these are the first batch of branches. I was a national organizing secretary. I went up in the country to get branches formed.
Mm-hmm.
There were occasions when I would drive in my sleep. The first by-election was in Kampong Baru, and we had a candidate. The second by-election, I think, was at Boy. Wow, in Johor Bahru. I remember that I was coming back from Johor Bahru to Kuala Lumpur. In Muar, you come Muar and you go northwards. You turn right, you cross the bridge. Suddenly I found myself on the left. That's Tanjung. I was going up and down the country, and I was then very young, in my 20s. And I was also in charge of the rocket, getting the English, the Malay, the Chinese, and Tamil out based on the English text. So that was from 66 to 69. And in 69, I was supposed to stand in KL Manda because Goh Hao Guan, the Secretary General, we were sent in Bangsa. So I was starting to work in Kevanda. But before that, I stood in Sedang by-election, December 1968. Because the Labour Party has decided that the elections is a phony to bluff the people. They told all their elected reps to resign. So there was a by-election, and I stood, but I was defeated because of the split votes between MCA, Karakan, and the DAP. That led to an electoral understanding between the DAP and Karakan. And although I was supposed to, and I started work in KL Panda, we gave the seat to Karakan, Detention. So at that time, I was supposed to the next best seat in KL. KL at that time was part of Selangor. We don't have high hopes that we will be very successful. We may win one or two, or you may not win at all. So Devan Nair, at that time, he was already at advanced stage of withdrawing from Malaysia. He didn't believe that I would win in Damansara. So he told me, go to Malacca. Yeah, you go to Malacca. So I went. And I went to Malacca. I was a total stranger. I don't know Malacca. So I went and contested, and I won. And the DAP won quite successfully. Even Damansara, Ho Chuk Fun defeated Michael Chen. So a new history was written. Then the May 13. But May 13, I was never in KL. On May 13 morning, I was flew to Kota Kinabalu.
Right.
And in order to help the independent candidates, William Lai. And I learned about the May 13 took place in KL when I was speaking in the public already. Somebody
went up
whispered to me, and I said there was trouble in KL, but we don't know what it was. So we went on. I remember we were staying in the Winners Hotel, WINER, Winners Hotel. Next day, May 14, two immigration officers came and told me to leave the state because I had attacked Tun Mustafa. Not because of May 13. I didn't do May 13. Because I have attacked Tun Mustafa. And Tun Mustafa was then quite powerful, very powerful. He was the Lord of the Ring in Sabah.
Lots of wrong.
He could do anything.
Okay.
And at that time, he had a special executive jet, and I was attacking him on that. So, being young and rebellious, I went to visit Kota Kinabalu. At that time, there's only one plane one day. So the plane went off, and it saved my life because the Bachao horsemen, who were the very loyalist supporters of Tun Mustafa, they heard about the thing. They went to the airport. They want to finish me off. They want to kill me. So the special branch sent a boy. So luckily I survived.
Wow.
But the police said, tomorrow you must go. you cannot leave. So at night, I stayed in William Lai's house. And on the 15th of May, the police came and said, I want to make sure you leave the flight. So we left the flight. And I left. But I couldn't fly back because Subang was in curfew. I spent 3 days, 3 nights in Singapore, in Devan Nair's house. I kept contact with party leaders, the family, and he told me, you don't come back. You're on the wanted list. You will be arrested. But I said, how can you don't go out? You tell people you want to be their leader, you want to be a member of parliament. It is against the grain. So on the 17th, I booked a ticket. I told my family, I'm not coming back. But I was going to the airport. And I had a press conference in Woodwood Hotel.
Wow.
And I said, we offer our cooperation to restore peace and development. And I came back. And I remember the flight from Singapore to KL. And in the old days, there was a postcard, where you were king, scribble. So I wrote to my wife and children. I don't know where is the postcard. Maybe in the special branch. And the Suwon airport, we had to come out because you are coming from a different country. And they check our passport. There were 2 immigration officers, 2 armed policemen.
Okay.
So and the queue up. When it came to my turn, I asked, "Are you looking for me?" I don't know why I asked. They look at, come.
That sounds like a fun party.
So from Subang Airport, I was taken to KL.
Mm.
And along the way, you see overturned cars, and it was curfew.
Chaotic.
And I was registered, so what? And I was taken to Kuala Selangor police station, lockup, where I spent for 60 days. That's the custodial period. 2 special branch officers came. I told them, you have everything on me. I have nothing to hide. We don't operate any secret activities. Ask what you want. You ask me, I will answer you. So I type the answers for them. I'm nothing to hide. But in exchange, they take me to rest house and you had the makan.
Wow.
But at the end of the 60 days, the detention of the case. You'll be detained for 2 years. You'll be at Moa. So I was taken to Moa detention camp. And in those days, there was a rule. You don't go into the detention camp except at midnight. I don't know what was the reason. So I went to the Moa lockup, the detention camp. During the Japanese time, they execute people. Very eerie and
like it's a very dark history there.
And then of course I was placed in compound C, A, B, C. A, B are the Labour Party people, the Socialist Front people, and they regard the DAP as enemies. And I was placed in section C. And each of us will have a cell, but the cell is not locked. You have a larger compound. And it had a motley crowd. I was probably the only political detainee.
So like you actually met like gangsters, for example.
Those who forged documents, the gangsters, and the troublemakers.
I see.
And that's why I met Hamidor.
Wow.
We became cellmates. And so I decided to learn Jawi and decided to do law. And
it sounds like a very interesting prison environment right there. You were like studying law, you learned Jawi, you literally took on an external degree. I think that you wrote your exams like even while you were in prison, right, at that time.
They sent a former teacher of me to be invigilator.
In the prison?
In prison, I was he and me.
Okay. Okay. Well, did you maybe try to like reform the prisoners, like even when you were there, like tell them, I know you've done some bad things, but you need to live a better life, that sort of thing. Were you ever doing anything like that?
See, they left you alone.
They left you alone.
Unlike in Operation Alang, where there's a group, they try to change your thinking. So in the Operation Alang, we told them, you don't change our thinking.
So they tried to brainwash you like during the Operation Alang?
Rehabilitation unit.
Rehabilitation.
They want to rehabilitate you. I said, what's that to rehabilitate?
So in the process of trying to rehabilitate you, then they got rehabilitated.
Finally, they gave up.
I see. Wow, okay. I had read that even during Operation Lala, that was when you had the chance to meet many different people who eventually became like the
Yeah.
seeds of like future alliances.
In Operation Lala, we met the young past activists like Sabu, Mawali people, after Mawali, I think Mujahid was there. Then there was another past minister. Who is that? The past minister for Care Banda. Brother of who is the UMNO minister? His brother. One brother in UMNO, one brother in PAS. And both became ministers.
Wow, that is an interesting family. Fascinating.
Well, we met them in Kamunting.
Mhm.
And that led to a subsequent formation of a closer relationship.
Mm. So, in a sense, you could say that even that attempt to imprison you led to a situation where the opposition would eventually become able to become politically viable, then, in a sense.
You came to understand that you can cooperate. There's a room for cooperate if we are take the middle ground. You don't take extreme position.
I see. Fascinating. Well, when you move on, Tan Sri, towards becoming Secretary General of the DAP,
I became Secretary General of the DAP in 1969.
right, and that was after May 13 as well.
In detention.
In detention.
When I was in the detention, the CEC had decided you be the Secretary General. Because Goh Guan went to UK, came back, and was warned that he would be arrested if he did not resign. So he resigned. Although many party leaders went to Singapore, and he was in Singapore, to persuade him not to do so. And he said he is not prepared to be arrested. And so that was it.
Wow. And you were doing that even through secret messages here, there, and everywhere.
You can receive communication, correspondence, letters but they will be censored. There will be a group which will read your communications.
Wow.
And they will be entitled to even to delete certain passages. But then what's that the name? Ours is not a secret movement, underground movement.
Wow. Okay. But so you managed to do that even while you were in prison. So, well, what actually was leading you, right, to even do things like study law and continue this work while you were in prison?
Well, you have nothing else to do. All right, well,
Okay.
you keep yourself occupied.
Okay. So, while you were in prison, there were so many different possibilities that you could have done, right? I mean, you could have studied law, you could have studied accountancy, like, for example, your son, Mr. Lim Guan Eng. You could have studied, like, I don't know, like an engineering degree or something of that nature. So, why law of all the possibilities?
Well, I mean, hopefully it will assist you in your political work.
Okay. Do you feel that it did at some later point? Because I think, so you didn't become a practicing lawyer, did you?
I was practicing for a few months, I gave up. Too busy.
I see. Okay.
Running around.
I see. Understandable. Cool. And so, that being said, though, in that time when you were the opposition leader, sir, you were definitely tremendously vocal. I remember reading that, well, you had sent out 100 parliamentary questions in the course of a single day when you were in Parliament. So many to the point that
That is, I was released on the first of October 1970, and the first meeting of Parliament, because Parliament was suspended. The first meeting of Parliament was sometime in February 1971. So, as usual, they asked for questions to be submitted. At that time, there was no limit to oral and written questions. So,
100.
being conscientious parliamentarians, we submitted. I submitted about 152, I think, and over 150 questions, and as a result, they amended the standing orders to limit questions to be asked. You say that you can't ask so many questions.
Wow, ladies and gentlemen, the reason that we now have a 20 question limit.
So now we are 20 there.
Wow. And that is really cool in a whole lot of different ways. In many ways, well, when we think back on reading the newspaper, so many people consider you a hero in like fighting for a whole lot of different issues. Your blog has become a place for socio-political discourse. You've had commenters like all this while here and there. But maybe let's think about that blog, right, in the context of, say, education, amongst other things right there. We could say that, it's a place where you can share ideas, thoughts, and other things like that. But what led you to start writing a blog? And what was your thinking at the time?
I think it was the 1990s. 1990s, I think the internet came only about 94, 95. 90, or the beginning of 90s. And being quick to learn, we should learn to keep abreast of developments. I was pushing the party, our leaders, to be able to master the internet, the technological skills necessary. So we started very early. And the blog was one of the consequences.
I see.
And at that time, there was a multimedia super corridor. So I was talking a lot about IT. In fact, I came up with a book, IT for All. So that was a period in 1995. It was not so advanced yet. That is the last 20 years.
Okay, wonderful. So, as you have blogged and kind of, written a whole lot of different things right there. So I've seen that you've written a lot, amongst other things, about some of the following topics. I was actually showing this to Miss Fu earlier, but have you ever tried looking at like the blog archive, like the total number of posts right there? Because
the blog is there. I don't know about that, guys.
Okay.
The blog is there. You can find it. You can check.
Yeah. So like, if you look at the total number of posts on the blog, and this will be on the screen a little bit later on, the most popular topics are Najib, 4,000 something entries right there. And then also you have, amongst other things, UMNO, I think it's like 1,000 something, thereabouts. So education is, now we actually have it right here, see? So you have like One Malaysia, 567, and then you can have, let's see, amongst other things, the AP, and in terms of education, you have like 682. Yeah. So what is it that made education such a consistent focus of what you were writing about?
I think one of the things we want is to have educational reform and a system which reflects plural society in Malaysia. And one of the reasons is, in many aspects, we are becoming a we are losing to other countries. We are becoming a failed state. And if we are going to improve ourselves, we must educational, economic, and welfare issues, environment issues must foremost in its kind.
Okay, wonderful. So, when you think about the education of, say, the modern Malaysian in this day and age, how do you feel that it is different from the kind of education that you received when you were a child, and also the education that your children ended up receiving as well?
At present, virtually 90% of Chinese go to Chinese primary schools. In the old days, in my time, it was not in that period. And I think this is because of the change of English medium into the Bahasa Malaysian medium. Or the change should have been more measured. And the reason the parents are worried because standards will be lowered. And as a result, you have in Malaysia today international schools, not only primary, Chinese primary and Tamil primary schools, apart from national primary schools, but international schools. So the confidence of parents in the high standard of education is not there. We must have a system where the national education system commands high educational standards, and it must start somewhere.
Thank you for that. When we look at the national climate, we do see that there are a lot of people who maybe distrust sometimes the national education system. You see people who have gone out there and fought against, for example, the vernacular education system right there. I've read multiple blog posts, case studies whereby educationists come up and say that vernacular schools, for example, are not a threat necessarily to national harmony right there. But do you feel that there is a pathway for Malaysia to move towards a reality where our national education system is respected?
One aspect that should be reflected in the education system is that Malaysia is a plural society. Multiracial, multilingual, multicultural, multi-civilizational. And I think it should reflect that. In fact, I think Malaysia has a distinguished position to show the world. We look at the future. And look at the future, you are going to prevent wars and conflicts. You must have intercultural, intercivilization, understanding, and cooperation. And that is something that Malaysia can build, can show the world what the future is like. If you look at the pre-civilization or early civilization, where transportation limitations, you have a very limited geographical space. That's not possible. We are looking at a new world, a new global concepts where you need people with global mindsets, and Malaysia can do that.
I see. And so you're saying that if Malaysia were to succeed at this national project of combining our culture somehow and creating...
Not combine, integrate.
Integrate, I see. And so if we were to successfully integrate to bring together a lot of different things, do you feel then that Malaysia could become an example for the world?
Yes.
You feel so? Wow.
And that's what I'm thinking about.
Wow.
So I believe the next 2 or 3 years will be very critical. I can understand Anwar's position. I mean, there are now a lot of criticisms against Anwar. He failed to implement reforms and institutional changes. But the reality is Malaysia is a plural society with the Malays in majority, the non-Malays in minority. And if he lose, he cannot get Malay support. He will lose his PMship. For him to try to shore up his support among the Malays is understandable. But he must not forfeit his pledges, the electoral promises to bring about change. So the next 2 or 3 years, he must be able to, not to accomplish, not to finish, but at least make some significant anyway.
I see. Thank you for that. One of the things that I've always observed about democratic society is that it is based on the power of the people. The people make choices. But as an economist, what I understand is that the way that people make choices depends on their preferences. But a person's preferences are also shaped by their education, what they have heard about, who they listen to, the total sum and matrix of influences that they have been exposed to throughout the course of their lives right here. When you think about Prime Minister Anwar staying in power, do you feel that one of the possible ways to do that is to maybe educate the entire population?
I think the majority of the Muslims want understanding, tolerance, and cooperation. But if the Muslims are made to believe that the non-Muslims want to finish them off, want to displace them, they will react. And the present, there is a view of the green wave.
Right.
It's inevitable. I don't believe so. And tomorrow's by-election will be an important indicator. We must represent hope. We must represent a vision of a better tomorrow. And I believe that this can be done.
This can be done. Okay, wonderful.
I think one of the lessons we must learn is this. When we're in the opposition, we think that things can change overnight. 2018, 2020, sure move.
Yeah.
That 20 months. We thought a lot of people complain. What has he achieved? He has ended the UMNO hegemony. But he has not bring about change. In fact, there will be people who will say we have gone worse with Mohideen, Ismail Sabri, and Anwar at present unable to do very much. But things can change overnight. Ours is not the 1789 revolution like the French Revolution. You don't obey, guillotine, chop head. You have to influence.
Right.
And I think that it takes time. So I think we must have a longer view. A longer view to bring about change. But change we must.
Change we must.
Change we must. We must move towards institutional reforms and changes, but it takes time. So we must have a longer view of things. And I think that Anwar's appointment of the Chief Secretary is important because it is something which has created concerns among the top government leaders. And government civil service is 1.4 million. You cannot change overnight. There's what is known as a deep state. But the state must be influenced. So it takes time to influence the state.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. There is a quote by the late author Kurt Vonnegut Jr. Kurt Vonnegut Jr. So he said the following words. True terror is when you wake up one day and you discover that your high school class is running the country. When we think about the students of the present age, so later on, they will become the leaders. Every single one of us was a student. Even you, Tan Sri, were a student at some earlier point of your life right there. From the past, we go over to the present, and we have the future that is continually evolving into the present and then the past. When you think about the education of our next generation, how do you feel that Malaysia should change its approach so that we can have a better shot at a better future? In this world of even brain drain, we have perhaps PISA scores that are maybe not up to par. I recall that in your writings, you were talking about how, well, Muhyiddin had hoped for a miracle, so to speak, but that didn't really happen right there. And therefore, what should change about education so that we can meet the challenges of the next era and beyond?
You must have a generation that is prepared to move in the future, to change ways, to improve the ways they're thinking, to have a better appreciation of improvement, a better vision of us, how to improve ourselves, how to constantly improve ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I see. A vision of improving.
A better tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And so, as we move towards the end of this interview, what in your eyes, Tan Sri Lim Siang, is a better tomorrow? Generations of people have thought about what better means. The question of good and evil has sometimes been context dependent, but at the same time, some people maintain a view of absolutes. And so, what is good? And what is it that we are aiming for? Is it wealth? Morality?
I think a better life. A better life, one must not be submit to lies, disinformation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest challenges today is how to free oneself from the lies and disinformation of the social media.
Mm-hmm.
And to appreciate a new world, a world which is AI. And by that, I don't mean US politics where Trump talk about AI crowds.
Wow. That is an interesting future to think about right here. And yeah, any words for the next generation in terms of facing the challenges right here? Like maybe study law when you eventually get replaced by ChatGPT or...
The fulfillment of our destiny is to see Malaysia to be an example to the world of inter-civilization, dialogue, understanding, and cooperation.
Amazing. Thank you, sir. My very last question for you, sir. Do you believe in destiny?
Destiny is all we make ourselves.
Tan Sri Lim Siang, it's an
Okay.
absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right, thank you so much.
You don't want to have PhDs who tell lies and
Lim Guan Yu.
oh, I'm having a case.
Okay. Cut.